So I've gone into detail about the RASC before, the Royal Army Service Corps, and that's on the Corgi Bedford QL video. That was a few months ago. But I've never gone into proper detail about it, and most people who watch the channel know how interested I am in this subject, not just because I'm reading a really thick book from 1955 and I'm only on page 407 of 725, so still a long way to go, but I've found out a lot. But most people don't actually know how it affects me, and this video is actually part of a longer video, but I've obviously split it up into sections. The longer video will go on my other channel called Andy's Life in the very near future. So take away what you will. Hopefully I get to see an expert very soon, and the reason is because I have these visions. It's basically like a trance, and I'm seeing exactly the same thing. It's usually without sound, things that I cannot put my finger on. One of them is when we turn out of the goods yard, we turn right, and that's exactly the same direction that we came. We go up the hill, and then it basically just cuts out. So am I taking it back to a supply dump near the beaches? I don't know. The second thing that's confusing is the OY, the Bedford OY, has a wooden body, not a steel body, and we're talking July 1944 here. So there's a few things that don't make sense, and I'm hoping that a hypnotherapist could shine light on this. I've had this recurring images, as I said, slash trance, since the 8th of December 2019, and I certainly don't want it to go away. I think it's a marvellous thing, but I just want to get to the bottom of it. Why am I seeing the exact same route, the exact same lorries? Why is it the exact same thing? Basically, I just want answers, to be honest. How come this happened? I don't know. Maybe because of that book. It could have been because of that book. I don't know. And then number 3 is basically, I don't want this to go out of my head. No, I'm not looking for that. But I want an explanation. Why is it always the same? You see, back in World War II, for those who don't know, and I'm sure there's a good few people watching who don't know, the logistics service changed their lorries quite a lot. You see, they would start off with British lorries, then of course Lend-Lease came in, and they shipped them direct to North Africa, American lorries, mainly the Mac NR series, the tank transports. I believe they were the very first American lorries that the RASC had. Then after that, in Normandy, you would have your I think it was 10-ton NMs, which of course were 3-axle general cargo configuration. And then after like 2-3 months, they would swap them out for Bedford QLs and then Bedford OYs, and it didn't make any sense. It makes sense now because of maintenance issues. That makes a lot of sense. Plus, remember, in World War II, you see, in World War II, the trucks had a 3-ton payload. So basically, you could only load 3 tons into one truck. Could you imagine how many trucks that took to supply, say, an infantry platoon or a brigade or even a division? Yeah, a hell of a lot of trucks. And if there's one thing that never got resolved in World War II, there was never, ever, ever enough trucks, especially for the British Army. You would have the 21st Army Group, of course, under Montgomery. They need all the supplies that they could. So clearly that had to be brought on trucks. But then you would have a section of that army, say, that would invade, say, Antwerp, for instance, in Belgium. So what they need? They would need more rounds for their firearms. But so would the people who were pushing into the Rhine. They'd need it as well. So there's clearly a compromise that would have to be made. One of the sections would not get everything they needed, quite clearly. Plus, it was a world war, so you were fighting on multiple fronts, including Burma and the Pacific, and of course they need supplying. And I know that in Burma they were very successful with airdrops from Dakota Mark IIIs, but how would they get from the harbour to the airfield? Exactly, by lorry. So again, the demands placed on the RASC was mega. It was mega. There was never enough lorries to go around. And surprising, yesterday at Lytham, I found out, talking about payloads, that if you loaded all of the ammunition for the quick fire 25-pounder anti-tank gun, well, I say anti-tank gun is basically artillery for anything, weren't it? But they did use it on tanks. In a QL, it wouldn't come up to the tilt, which means it wouldn't come up to the top of the tailgate. And they said to me that that would be one stack. So if you can imagine a flatbed wagon, imagine crates on there, but only one, not stacked up, that is a 3-ton payload. So it's like many friends have said to me, not only did they overload these trucks, they would have to overload them, because you clearly cannot get one stack of supplies to, say, an infantry brigade because you didn't have enough trucks. So you would either load them all the way up to the tailgate, or if you put the canvas down, you would load them all the way up to the top of the canvas. So you're overloading them. So what's the first thing to go when you overload something? Clearly the springs. And in the Western Desert, they had a lot of trouble with springs because nobody thought, oh, wait a minute, we're overloading them. And you guys at the workshops, you need springs more than oil, more than lubricants, more than spare tyres, more than whatever else. So the supplies weren't in place when the mechanics really needed them to keep these trucks on the road, to keep them supplied to the people who clearly needed them. So there you go. In a nutshell, really. I do get carried away, but you know, that's me at the end of the day. So yeah, and I just wish I could do this on Andy's Vehicle History channel. I wish that I could just look into the camera and just say all this. Obviously I have, I can reuse this video if I need to, but yeah, you know, we like to go into detail, and of course, in my opinion, the drivers of these lorries, they're the real heroes. They're the people who won the war. You can talk about your artillery gunners, your tank crews, your infantry, but without the people who drove these lorries, couldn't get them there. I know the German army, most of them operated by horsepower. Most of their supply wagons were pulled by horses. Yep, I get that, but look what happened to them. And horses are not as quick as the internal combustion engine. But yeah, you know, if I can get to that hypnotherapist, then I'll be very happy to talk about all this. Hopefully he's come up with some sort of explanation. What's over the hill? Why does it keep repeating itself? Could it be possible that this is a form of life? Is that, you know, is that it? Is that what I'm actually seeing for real? I don't know. So this is Mickey Mouse camouflage. So you can see where the pattern is. That's why they called it Mickey Mouse, because it reminds them of Mickey Mouse's ears. Trucks in 1944 that obviously went over to the continent, and even the Royal Air Force had them, because remember the RAF had their own supply section. They rarely relied on the RASC apart from in bases like Iceland, for instance, and the Faroe Islands, and other isolated outposts, as they called them. So very rarely did they depend on RASC. So, of course, Royal Army Service Corps supply lines, or LFC, line of communication, because they would have their own supply lines. I'm not too sure how the RAF worked. I don't know if they would have like 20 wagons in convoy in an echelon. If it worked just like the RASC, I presume it did, because there is no books on that particular subject to do with the Royal Navy or RAF, but I know the Royal Navy did have a helping hand to do with munitions at the start of World War II with the RASC, I presume, like down in Portsmouth or Plymouth, somewhere like that. But again, that I don't know much about, and I'm really not going to go into that bit. So anyway, like I said, it's a recurring, I want to say dream, but it actually happens when I'm awake. So it is like a trance. When I basically think of the RASC, obviously I'm reading the book. I have like 8 books, not all on the same subject. Some are World War II, some are World War One. One is interwar, and 2 are post-war. So it's just one of these things that I'm very interested in, because there's so many historians that go on about infantry and artillery and tanks. They won the war. They didn't win the war. If it weren't for these guys who drove the lorries delivering the supplies, then there you go. But that goes for all sides. So in my opinion, they are the real heroes. And call it, visually immersed, call it what you will. But that's what keeps happening, and I, hopefully, this year, aim to get to the bottom of it. I don't know how long these appointments take. I don't know if it's like a counselling where it's one session after another, or if you can basically do it in the space of maybe an hour or two. I don't know how it works. So when I see my counsellor today, she already knows about this. I don't go specifically for this, obviously, as you know, I broke up with the last girlfriend back in January, and it's done my head in pretty bad. So I've been seeing her to do with that. Now I don't feel that bad, but obviously, like interests or hobbies, or so I basically said, yeah, photography. I said World War II. I explained about the RASC, and I explained about these like trance states that I go into, and she understood. Because I've told her about it like 3 times now, hopefully she can pass me on to somebody who's an expert, who knows how to do hypnotherapy, and then we can once and for all conclude what's happening. Paddy did say it's something called REM, sleep disorder. Now I looked that up the other day,